So a while back, Tim reached out to me, cornered me, and said, "John, I'd like you to do a presentation. I want you to come to the keynote." I said, "That sounds great. What are we talking? June, July, August is fine." He's like, "It's going to be in January," and I'm like, "All right. Well, the good news is I've got a ton of great information. We can talk about small business survey. We can talk about CARES funding. We can talk about economic recovery." He said, "I want you to talk about people selling their businesses." I said, "Are you sure? Because I don't have that presentation." He's like, "No, it's good. You're going to do it." And I'm like, okay, well, we can do that. What are you thinking, 10, 15 minutes? He's like, 30 minutes. And I'm like, oh, at first I thought, what did I do to Tim? Like, how did I anger? He seems like such a nice guy. And then I realized it can't possibly be me. I'm delightful. Everyone loves me. It's you he's punishing. So for the next 30 minutes, as we go over this presentation that we're both going to be discovering together, I want you to think about what you did. And more importantly, how you're going to make it up to poor Tim, who had to bring you all here to suffer through this because of what you did. So as he mentioned, my name is John Bittner. I'm with the Alaska Small Business Development Center. We're actually, you saw the advertisement earlier that had the Manufacturing Extension Partnership. They're with the Business Enterprise Institute at UAA. We're with the Business Enterprise Institute at UAA. There's a lot of other organizations there. We love working with ARTers, particularly with KPEDD and the folks and Tim and his staff here that have done such a phenomenal job in this event today. Is this the largest group of people any of you have been around in forever? I'm I'm both really excited and I'm also kind of terrified because I don't know how weird I've gotten during the whole thing, right? So I'm like, all right, well, I'm wearing pants, so step one is good, but after that, I forget what I'm supposed to do next. We work with small businesses all over Alaska. We have offices here, Cliff Cochran here in Soldotna, and then we've got an office in Homer. We're opening up one in Seward here, hopefully soon. We've got Fairbanks, Juneau, Anchorage, all the places you'd expect. And then we have a roving rural program that handles basically everything else. Through our work through the SBDC, we work with about 1,500 to 2,000 businesses directly, one-on-one advising, and then we do training and workshops. This last year, about 5,000 or so. Some of those are, they've taken more than one class, but generally speaking, 3,000 to 4,000 businesses take our classes and learn to us. The reason I'm bringing this up is it gives us a really interesting insight into sort of economic trends, particularly among small businesses in the state. Here in Alaska, I want to make sure we understand what I'm talking about when I say small businesses. Everywhere else, you think small businesses and it's a subset, 60, 70% of all businesses. Here in Alaska, it's 99.5% of all the businesses in the state are small businesses. So really, I'm just the business development center, but we're not going to change the branding at this point. It's been 35 years. So one of the trends that we have noticed, and Tim brought it up in the introduction, is there has been a movement. It was starting pre-COVID of people exiting their businesses or trying to exit their businesses, but the last 3 years have really accelerated this process, that we're seeing way more people interested in trying to pass their business on to the next generation, sell their business and retire, do a lot of things. And while that's great, that's the end game, right? You don't want to work until you die, and that doesn't make any sense. You want to be able to sell your business. You want to be able to retire and move on to whatever one does when they retire. Hopefully Tim will find out here soon. They're discovering that it's not like selling a used car, right? You can't just put it up on Craigslist and, all right, sweet, we got the deal we were looking for, everything's hunky-dory. You can't just wake up tomorrow or today and decide I'm going to sell my business, and then next week you've got a deal in the works and it's all a done deal. This takes time, it takes planning, it takes preparation, and that's the part that gets a lot of people squirreled up, because when you finally decide to sell your business, it's usually something you want to do in the near future. You don't want to have to take the time and the years it takes to set your business up for success and to get the maximum amount of money for it when you're already sort of ready to go. So what we want to talk about here today is some of the things that you want to consider, some of the economic trends that we're seeing that you should factor into your thinking, or the people that you work with, if you work with businesses, and sort of how we go forward to put the best foot forward when you're trying to transition out of your business and into the next stage of your life. So one of the things we run into a lot, these are sort of the laundry list of reasons why people don't have a business plan. I'm not going to go through all of them, but the handful that I really think are important is nobody's got the time for this. I mean, yeah, those of you that run your own business, you know you're not doing it because you wanted to work a 20-hour work week, right? I mean, you're actually the worst boss you've ever had. You're going to work harder, you're going to be harder on yourself. It's, nobody else but you is going to put up with your management style the way you run your business for the most part. But at the end of the day, every week, month, year you spend, the earlier you get into planning for your exit strategy, the more benefit you're going to see on the back end, right? So the longer it takes you to get your head around this, the longer it takes you to structure things so it's not just operational, but transitional. And that's a key difference. Just because your business is profitable doesn't mean you can sell it, right? There's a lot of things that go into that, and you have to factor that in. So making the time is crucial. Eventually, even if you're not ready now, at some point you have to exit your business, willingly or not. That's just the nature of the beast. The other problems people come up with are it's too complicated. That's a fixable problem, but you're right. And then it would cause too much conflict and drama. This is a really interesting one. A lot of businesses, especially small businesses, are family affairs, right? If you have multiple heirs, if you have multiple children, it's not always an easy decision on who gets to take over the business or what the structure looks like. Somebody has to be in charge. If you have 3 kids and each of them have 33 1/3% interest in the company, I mean, it sounds equitable. It also sounds like a nightmare. And I think they're gonna have a real hard time selling that business come their time to exit as well. So all the reasons you can come up with not to have one of these plans, they pale in comparison to the upside and the need and the ability to limit the problems you're going to cause for yourself, your family, your estate later on in life if you don't factor in all these things. Another reason exit planning is so important is because this is, for most people, the largest and most important asset they own. If you're a business owner, this is your nest egg. This is your retirement. This is how you're going to provide for your children, your grandchildren, things along those lines. You need to take the time and spend the effort getting this business ready for sale, positioning, even if you're not selling it, positioning it for the next generation to take over, all of the factors. You have to be able to plan it out step by step, and most importantly, start from the end result you want and work your way backwards. How are you going to get from point A to point Z as quickly, efficiently, and cost effectively as possible? And so taking the time to really understand the factors that go into this. It's not just about, again, the bottom line of your financials. Just because your business is profitable doesn't mean that it's valuable to other people. If the profit, and this is something we run into a lot actually, professional services businesses, a lot of times the value of the company isn't the company, it's you. Right? You're the one with the connections, you're the one with the experience, you're the one with the training, the technical expertise. If you're the company's biggest asset, it's a little hard to sell it if you're leaving, right? I mean, that's not going to go great for your valuation. And so we're seeing a lot of people that they've been banking on transitioning out of their company and selling it and using those funds to sort of retire on and live the dream. And they're realizing that if they're not part of the package, they don't really have anything to sell. There's no assets. There's no, there's nothing else there unless you structure it appropriately, unless you plan for that transition, unless you have the type of staffing and other factors in play that still adds value to your business when you step away from it. And that's the key. A lot of people don't like to think like that, right? I mean, it's you spend a lot of time, you put your heart and soul into developing this company. It's been a dream usually. I mean, people get into this because it's what they've always wanted to do. The idea of selling it, handing it off to a stranger or handing it off to somebody else is complicated and difficult, but it is extremely important. The other factor that needs to be addressed is that we are heading into what most experts believe is going to be a tsunami of business sales. Baby boomers are some of the most entrepreneurial people in America, and they start and manage businesses at the highest rate of any age group currently in the US. And that's great, that's fantastic, but if you look at sort of the age range there, they're starting to retire. And COVID has done nothing but accelerate that process. They're starting to realize that there's more to life than having, running this business until you literally can't anymore. They want out, and they want to find ways to transition to the next stage of their lives. So that's a good thing, right? If you're looking to buy a business, if you want to get into entrepreneurship, but you don't necessarily want to do the whole startup route, you can find turnkey businesses. But the difficulty is if you're a business that's looking to sell, you're about to go into a very, very saturated market. If you look at the numbers, just by the numbers, about 12 million businesses in America are owned by people in the baby boomer generation. And that's folks that were born between 1946 and 1964. It's pretty wide spread there. And if you anticipate that about 70% of those businesses aren't going to fold or just be handed off to heirs or children, you're looking at a significant number of businesses that are going to hit the market sometime over the next 10, 15 years maybe. And we'll talk about we'll break down the math on that on an annual basis in the next slide, but that's a lot of businesses coming on the market all at the same time. So for one thing, there's going to be a capital issue, right? Where are we going to find the money to buy these businesses? How are we going to keep these businesses going? And it is extremely important that we keep these businesses going, because not only are they a major factor for the economy, they also employ about 25 million people. That's a large swath of the American economy, a large swath of our workforce that are tied up in these sort of family-owned, smaller, but very economically powerful businesses. We also need to factor in that without a succession plan, without a proper handoff, without the planning that goes into positioning a business, not just to get the maximum value, but to have the best chance of success after you leave, we're going to see a huge number of these businesses fail even if they are sold. If you look at the numbers just in the past, about 70% of family-owned businesses fail when they transition from the original owner to the next owner. That's pretty bad, right? But from the second owner to the third owner, only about 12% are still viable. And if you're lucky enough to be in that 12%, you transition to the next owner, 4 owners, right? I mean, this isn't a terribly long timeline. Only 3% of the businesses are still around. So we're going from a very large sort of base here, and we're whittling it down, and we're whittling it down, and we're whittling it down over the generations. And you can make up some of that with new businesses and things along those lines, but that's very difficult to build a stable economy off of. And it's also not guaranteed, right? I mean, businesses that are in existence that have proven viability are going to be a better bet in the long run than rolling the dice on startups. Startups have a huge failure rate. They're very important to the economy as well, but we can't lose this stable base of employment that allows all this startup activity to happen. And I'm not saying that the only reason these businesses don't manage to survive from generation to generation is the fact that they don't have a good transition or exit plan. But as somebody in my organization has been doing this for over 3 decades, I can tell you it is a huge factor. It is a huge factor. Just because you're really good at starting and running a business does not mean that you're thinking all of the factors through and how to transition out of the business. That's something that most business owners don't spend any time on. But it is crucially important, especially for your legacy. They're very good at maximizing profits. They're very good at making the sales, the technical expertise, but there's a different set of skills and needs that go into positioning your business to survive without you. And that's really important. So to give a feel for sort of the coming, Tsunami seems a little extreme, but this coming surge of potential mergers and acquisitions, we're going to do something that I hate, which is math. And we're gonna break this down. So if we look at, as I mentioned, let's say it's 60 to 70% of the 12 million baby boomer-owned businesses are on the market over the next 10 to 15 years. Let's say 15 years. That works out to about 7 million businesses over 15 years, 480,000 businesses annually. We should transition out if we'd spread it evenly, right? I mean, it won't, but something like averaging it out. In the last year in the US, there were only 30 to 40,000 businesses that changed hands. So we're going 30 to 40,000 businesses. Now all of a sudden there's almost 500,000 businesses potentially on the market in a year, every year for 15 years. Even if we spread that out to 20 years, which I think is the longest that you're going to look at before you have an almost full transition of these 7 million businesses, it still works out to somewhere around 400,000, 380 or so. So if you are getting ready to sell your business, this is the market you're going to be selling into. This is who you're competing with. You're competing with quite a few other businesses that are all equally motivated, that are all sort of going to have difficulty holding strong, waiting for the market to change, right? Because it's not ideally going to change for about a decade. And most people aren't going to be willing to wait that long. So it's going to be a bit of a buyer's market. You have to factor that in. And the best way to do that, and the best way to position your business as a viable product in this market, is to make sure that you've done everything you can to make your business as sellable as possible, to make your financials look as good as possible, to know how to position and promote your business as a viable purchase. And the best way to do that is through an exit or succession strategy plan. How do you do that? Well, for one thing, as we mentioned, you're not going to do it tomorrow. You're not going to, if you haven't been planning for this, it's going to take some time. And one of the good things potentially about sort of the way that COVID has impacted businesses, it's given them a little bit more time and breathing room to take away that one factor early on. I don't have enough time to do this. Well, we all ended up with a lot more time on our hands over the last 3 years than I think any of us really wanted. One of the things I hope businesses did was think a little bit about this, and I think they might have, because again, the pandemic has changed a lot of things fundamentally, and one of them is we hear a lot about sort of the worker issues, but there's also the business owner issues. They're getting tired. They're looking for other things. They want more, right? It's not just about the grind anymore. It's about, all right, I've done it. I've been there. Now what? I want to do something else. And I think that this is the best way to do it. If you look at how much time you need, on a minimum, you're talking about a year, right? You want about 3 to 4 months to talk to your advisors, 3 to 4 months to talk to your employees, your key employees, your family, things like that. You're going to need another 4 months or so to work out the details of the plan, to get everything prepared, to put together your documents. And then the last 3 to 4 months, depending, is how you're going to actually implement that plan. And go out, beat the bushes, start making the sales, and conditioning your suppliers or what have you, your employees and others, customers, to be prepared for the transition, because that's another part, right? I mean, you can't just leave it in a shambles. Like, just because you make the sale doesn't mean it's done. You have to be able to convince somebody that after you leave, there's a sort of a separation period, there's a way for them to go forward where they can not only maintain the financials that you've seen, but there's a potential for growth. The key to all of this is an advisory team. And this isn't set in stone. This isn't, every business is different, every business plan is different, but these are some examples of who you need on your side that are going to be working you through this process. You have to factor in estate planning. You have to factor in tax implications. You have to factor in what documents you have, the financials that you've got, how to clean up your books. If you've been running the same business for 30 years, it's a family-owned business, you're going to have we've seen all sorts of weird stuff on people's books, right? Things that, not illegal, but I mean, there's just like, what on earth is this RV? Like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, there's crazy things that just end up on there. See, we've been there for a decade or more, whatever. You got to get that stuff out. You got to clean out everything. Everything has to be immaculate and spotless, because when you go to sell your business, you're going to be under a microscope. They're going to ask a ton of questions, short timelines, short turnarounds. It's going to be like the worst house sale you've ever seen, right? I mean, there's just going to be a ton of different nitpicky details that you're going to have to come up with. And again, you want to start from the end and work your way back, right? You want to figure out what is the end result of all this. It's not always just the biggest dollar amount for your business. That helps, but sometimes it's, how do I make the handoff to my family without causing a bunch of drama and ruining Christmas for perpetuity? How do I, keep the business going? How do I make sure that the person that buys it isn't just the highest bidder, but somebody that's passion matches mine, right? Just because I want to sell my business doesn't mean I don't still care about it. I built this through blood, sweat, and tears, and I'm not just trying to make a quick buck and get out. I wouldn't have done this for 30 years if that's all I needed. Right? So understanding what your minimums are and then using that to sort of reverse engineer your plan, reverse engineer your system and your timeline is extremely crucial. This is more in line of sort of the plan details. I mean, you want to make sure you're setting goals. You want to make sure, I set myself a timer so I don't go over. You want to make sure that you're documenting this and not just setting it and forgetting it, right? The one thing that we see with people who have done plans, it's like going to the dentist or something. You do it once and all right, I'm done. I don't have to go ever. I don't have to go ever again. They looked at my teeth, everything's fine, nothing will ever change. It's very rare that that's the case in a succession plan, right? Life comes at you fast. There's a lot of different angles that you have to consider. So just because you have a plan doesn't mean you can never look at it again. You have to reevaluate it. You have to readjust it for new things. Did you expand? Did you contract? Has your financial position changed? Did COVID happen? I mean, there's all sorts of things that you have to factor in because that's going to impact the end result. And the communications piece is another part that we find is really difficult. When business owners decide to sell and when they go through this process, there's usually a really interesting sort of reluctance on their part to talk about it, especially to employees. They don't want employees to run away, to talk to their customers about it. They're afraid it's going to impact business. You have to, right? You do not want to blindside the people that you rely on to make your business viable with something like this. You have to prepare them for it, and more importantly, you have to show them that there is a plan in place. You're not just going to sell the company and just run for the hills. You've thought this through. You've covered your bases. Ideally, you've covered their bases as well, right? You want to make sure for the person that's buying your company that they have assurances that the employees aren't going to bail as soon as you leave, right? There has to be some sort of factor in there as well if you want to sell it. And all of that comes from communication. It's going to be uncomfortable, but it is absolutely necessary, and it'll pay off in the long run. These are some, I'm not going to get too deep in the weeds here because, again, it's a little different for each business, but these are some of the things that you have to come up with well in advance of getting ready to sell your business. Your financials have to be in order. If you have any IP, if you have anything like that, you have to have a very clean and easily accessible database of it. You have to have any kind of non-compete clauses, employee contracts, things along those lines, all set and ready to go, fully signed and executed. You have to be able to show that there's growth potential, right? Just because you make a certain amount of money every year, if someone's buying your business, they're usually also going to want to see some scalability, right? All right, if I come in, how do I grow this business so that it's more than what it is now? Sometimes that's not a factor, but for the most part, if somebody's buying your business, they're looking for an opportunity, and they're looking for an opportunity to grow, particularly. And then last but not least, you really need to be able, if you have employees, not all businesses do, but most do, if you have employees, you have to be able to figure out how to convey their technical expertise, their value to the company, and their importance to your end result and your bottom line to whoever you're selling the company to. It's something that's a little difficult to quantify in some cases, but it's extremely crucial, and a lot of people are looking for it. Some of the pitfalls here, again, don't wait. Every week, every month you wait is a lost opportunity and potentially a lower sale price, less attractive terms, more disruption for you and your family, more disruption for your employees and customers. It's just, there's no reason not to start this process as soon as you can. Even if you're not planning on selling the business for a while down the road, 10, 20 years. Getting this done and understanding what it takes so that you can reiterate and save yourself some time in the long run is going to be crucial. Updating the plan, also very, very key. And this is something a lot of people don't do. You really need to invest in future management. You need to make sure that there are people there who can hold the ship together while you're gone, even if they're not the ones that ultimately own the business. You have to have some sort of management structure in place so that the new owner has time to come up to speed if it's not one of the people that you're sort of training to be a successor. There needs to be some sort of management training, leadership training, and understanding of the fundamentals of the business in order to just promote stability. Last but not least, we're here to help. The Small Business Development Center, Cliff and Robert and the others are phenomenal. They do a lot of this work. They're much more well-versed on this than I am. I highly recommend if you're ever in need for not just exit succession planning, but any kind of business development, work with KPEDD, work with us. We partner really well together, and we're here to help in any way we can. Our services are free. We have a lot of training opportunities, a lot of templates, and all sorts of other ways that we can help you start, grow, and exit your business. And if you need to get in touch with me, here I am. Thank you all very much.